Coming up on Bridge City News, the trial to designate Trevor Pritchard a dangerous offender continued in a Lethbridge courtroom today. Even though there are no active cases of COVID-19 in our city, the temporary mandatory mask bylaw is now in effect. We have reaction. And we hear from a 15-year-old agribusiness entrepreneur who explains why farmers are getting a raw deal.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. After several adjournments this year, a hearing to determine whether convicted sex offender Trevor Pritchard should be designated a dangerous offender has resumed in the Lethbridge courtroom. Pritchard has convictions for sexually assaulting underage girls in 2004, 2009, and 2010. He pleaded guilty in 2018 to sexual assault and child luring in relation to one girl and was sentenced in February of last year to 6.5 years in prison. The dangerous offender designation would give Pritchard an indeterminate term of imprisonment without a chance of parole for 7 years. Video journalist Naveen Day has an update for us now from the Lethbridge Courthouse. Nav?
Thank you, Hal. In a 2018 assessment conducted by forensic psychologist Nan Lau, Trevor Pritchard was interviewed to hear his version of the offenses. Pritchard admitted that his motive in luring the females was to eventually have sex with them, but the onus was on them to disclose that they were minors. Lau concluded that Pritchard lacked his insight into his behavior and denied his personal responsibilities and placed them on others. He goes on further to say that it was rare for Pritchard to admit any wrongdoing. In institutional treatments aimed at helping those who have committed sex crimes, Lau reported that Pritchard was not interested in his own rehabilitation and was more focused on feeling like a victim of other people's behavior. The hearing is expected to adjourn on Thursday and resume in December.
Lethbridge police are warning city businesses about an email bomb threat scam. Police have already responded to 3 unfounded bomb threats received by local businesses yesterday and are advising business owners to be aware in case they are targeted. In all 3 cases, the fraudster said in an email that an explosive device was placed inside of their building and would be detonated unless a large amount of Bitcoin was provided. Any local business owner who's received one of these email threats is asked to call Lethbridge Police right away. 4 people were arrested following a drug bust in Brooks. Police say the group was charged with drug and firearms offenses after more than $46,000 in cash and drugs were seized. Alert investigators seized 425 grams of cocaine, 42 grams of methamphetamine, 1,200 in cash, also prohibited weapons and drug paraphernalia. 30-year-old Jack Burchell, 56-year-old Brent Valen, 33-year-old Gary Valen, and 20-year-old Adriana McSavany face various charges, including drug possession, trafficking, and possession of a prohibited weapon. A Calgary man whose daughter was killed in a crash while he was driving impaired will be sentenced on September 9th. Michael Bomford was found guilty of drunk and dangerous driving in October of 2016 in a crash which killed his 17-year-old daughter Megan and seriously injured her friend. Kelsey Nelson, who is now 20, told the court that she has a permanent brain injury which includes memory problems. The Crown is asking for a 7-year sentence. The defense has argued for 5. Businesses are navigating the new mandatory mask bylaw set out by Lethbridge City Council earlier this week. The issue has divided both business owners and customers alike. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly spoke with some entrepreneurs who share their take on this very contentious issue.
Big John's Books in Lethbridge believes that adhering to the mask bylaw could determine whether or not they have to close their doors for good.
The alternative is that we get shut down again, and that's just death sentence for small businesses. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but if I have to close, we're probably 2 months away from being closed, period.
Lethbridge has a diverse business community. From luxury dress clothing to a comedy club, each owner has their own way of navigating the bylaw.
Living up to the standards of the bylaw, and we're supplying masks to our customers when needed, selling masks as needed, and having masks on ourselves here in the store.
We do require you to wear the mask when you come in, take it off when you're seated at your seat, and please enjoy the show and feel as comfortable as you want. Laugh, enjoy.
The city of Lethbridge acknowledges that there are 2 very clear sides to the issue, but are encouraging residents to have a compassionate approach when it comes to the local business community.
There really is no middle ground that I've seen with this. It's either one way or the one side or the other. Both have their valid points, both have their valid reasons. Try and make it a little better for the businesses that have already endorsed the fact that they want you to wear masks.
I want people just to understand we're just trying to do the best we can, and that's about it.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf spoke about the temporary mask bylaw in our city. Newdorf says he respects council's decision, but being that there are no active COVID-19 cases in our city, we should consider other options.
We just need to have a plan there. I think people want to get back to their lives and understand that protecting against risk is warranted and important, and we want to do that. But when there's very little to no risk, are there options available to us? So I think that'll be something that the City Council had to be very aware of, and listening to constituents on a go-forward basis. And as it's a municipal issue, I forward that feedback to City and Council as appropriate.
BCN also reached out to Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips for comment, but did not hear back. The city says a fine for not wearing a mask is $100. The temporary mandatory mask bylaw is in effect until the end of the year. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney made a minor cabinet shuffle yesterday. Doug Schweitzer goes from Justice Minister to new Jobs, Economy and Innovation portfolio. Casey Madieu has moved to Schweitzer's old position as Justice Minister, and Tracy Allard has moved into the Municipal Affairs portfolio.
Tracy has a lifetime of real-world business experience. She and her husband and their family businesses have created literally hundreds of jobs. Tracy really personifies the entrepreneurial culture of Alberta, and she will bring even more practical, small and medium-sized business experience to the cabinet table.
Many critics of the UCP government wanted to see Health Minister Tyler Shandro get the boot. Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf says that he supports the move by Kenney to keep Shandro on as our province's Minister of Health.
I think the Premier said it very, very well. The health ministry is the single largest and over 40% of the entire budget. Massive challenges there for any minister. Yes, it's been controversial. It is difficult when you have to make some corrective adjustments, and that's challenging. I think I support the ministry and the Premier in saying he needs to see this portion of the work go through. He's begun it, he's started it. It's very difficult. It would be virtually impossible to hand off to somebody else at this stage.
Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips was previously quoted as saying, "These cabinet shuffle moves come from the top with Jason Kenney, and the cabinet shuffle is potentially a refurbishing of the Economic Development Ministry or putting a new salesman in charge." The province announced today that SALMA LAKHANI is the new Lieutenant Governor of Alberta. She takes over from Lois Mitchell. LAKHANI is the 19th Lieutenant Governor in our province's history and the first Muslim in Canadian history to serve in the ceremonial position.
I, SALMA LAKHANI, shall well and truly execute the office and trust of Lieutenant Governor of the province of Alberta and duly and impartially administer justice therein.
LAKHANI, who's originally from Uganda, has lived in Edmonton for 40 years. She currently owns and operates an early childhood education center. The Alberta government is in talks to build a 1,000-kilometre-an-hour magnetic dual monorail link between Edmonton and Calgary. A memorandum of understanding was signed between the province and Transpod to potentially build a $6 to $8 billion Hyperloop. So instead of a 90-minute drive, it would cut travel time to just around 30 minutes. While the province has not agreed to commit any taxpayers' funds to the proposal, it has agreed to work toward finding a way for the elevated Hyperloop, expediting approvals and supplying transportation information. Officials will work to identify a 10-kilometre stretch of land between Olds and Didsbury to construct a test track to confirm the technical and economic viability of the proposal. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, says they need more information about those who are worried about getting an eventual COVID-19 vaccine. She said government officials want to figure out how to best communicate safety and effectiveness.
And just because there's an accelerated process to get vaccines for Canadians does not mean we're going to shortchange anything on safety and effectiveness. And we'll be, providing that information as vaccine clinical trials results come in as well. So, and I do have confidence in our regulatory system. And so part of that is, so there's many different components, I think, to address the varied landscape of vaccine confidence.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says kids must be safe in their classrooms and parents should not be losing sleep over it. Earlier today, he announced that Ottawa was providing an additional $2 billion in funding to help provinces and territories cope with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Our children must always be our top priority as parents and as governments. Once people know their kids are safe, they can get back to work with less worries. Education is, of course, a provincial jurisdiction, and I told the premiers yesterday that we absolutely respect that. What we're announcing today is designed to support provinces and territories in the best way possible. Our government is here to help. We've made this funding flexible, so provinces and ultimately schools can use it for what they need most, from hand sanitizer to remote learning.
Now, this money is on top of the $18 billion which was already allocated to schools for back-to-school safety measures. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says the funds should come with explicit plans to address safety in schools, including mandating smaller class sizes. Critics say the money is too little too late and it's coming too close to the start of classes. The Parliamentary Budget Office says this fall's one-time payments of up to $600 for people with disabilities will cost Ottawa $792 million. The Liberals say the funds will help close to 1.7 million people deal with extra costs associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. While the cost of the payments should be on the books for this year, the Budget Office warns there could be potential fiscal impacts moving forward. The Flex Air Parkinson Step and Stride event is going virtual this year. As Mike Quinn explains, almost 2,000 workers joined in last year, but with COVID this year, the Parkinson Association of Alberta is hoping for another great turnout this year with a good financial goal to be able to help those who suffer from the disease.
Walkers will step and stride their way to the virtual world to raise awareness and funds for Parkinson's disease.
It's going to be different for sure. It's hard to kind of get that camaraderie of having that big group of people together. But there's so many amazing things that we've been able to get this year. There's weekly workouts, and there's going to be a program itself right on walk days so that everybody has a chance to participate.
Last year in Alberta, the event raised over $380,000, and in Lethbridge, it brought in $15,000. The Parkinson Association of Alberta has a similar goal for this year.
So our goal for Lethbridge this year is $12,000. For the province, we're saying $250, just because we know COVID has hurt a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of industries, a lot of families.
Parkinson's disease is a neurological condition that currently has no cure.
There's a part of your brain that produces dopamine, and dopamine is what is required for you to do any movement, from blinking to walking to swallowing to waving to talking. All of that requires movement, which requires dopamine. When you have Parkinson's disease, your brain actually stops or starts to slow down your production of dopamine naturally.
For more information on the event, you can visit stepandstride.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The City of Lethbridge and Ipsos have teamed up to ask residents to identify what areas need improvement in our city. The 15 to 20-minute phone survey is on now until September 6th. Last May, City Council approved an operating budget review in order to discuss COVID-19 related changes, the KPMG operational review, and possible amendments to the provincial budget. Feedback from residents will help the city move forward in regards to decisions made about various programs and services. When it comes to farming and ranching, there are a lot of misconceptions. Now that's according to 15-year-old Luke Zielinski, who started up his own online business called AgTech Steam. Luke says many times farmers get a raw deal, and that's not right.
There's a lot of misconception going around that, big agriculture nowadays is bad for the environment, and it's just generally a bad practice that farmers are cruel to their animals and that it's not ethical, when really that isn't true at all. And that's, I say, one of the industry's biggest problems is misconception and stereotypes.
Catch the colorful interview with this 15-year-old entrepreneur from Carbon, Alberta, Luke Zielinski, coming up after business news. There are some who are celebrating the fact that Aaron O'Toole and not Peter MacKay won the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. You can include pro-lifer Cameron Wilson from the organization the Wilberforce Project in that group. Cameron, why did you prefer O'Toole over MacKay?
Defining moment of the election campaign, in my opinion, was when Peter MacKay described Andrew Scheer's background as a social conservative, as a stinking albatross that was hung around the neck of the party. And the meaning that he wanted to convey is that we've got to get rid of social conservatives, that their values are dragging the party down. And so it was so important that social conservatives rallied and made sure that a leader who was hostile like that did not win. And while Aaron O'Toole isn't a pro-lifer, he's not a fellow traveler as a social conservative, he at least respects us enough to value our place in the party.
Leslyn Lewis, who raised $2 million during her leadership campaign, is pro-life, and she says she'll be running to win a seat as an MP. How important is that to you?
It shows just how far a compassionate, courageous, pro-life candidate who understands how to phrase the message in a way that it resonates with the common sense of the average Canadian, how far such a candidate can go. I think that she'll be a phenomenal candidate and hopefully a phenomenal part of a future O'Toole government. And I think O'Toole respects her enough to understand her value.
Cameron Wilson with the Wilberforce Project, thanks for your time today. The president of the Native Women's Association of Canada wants a national review of Amber Alert policies. Lorraine Whitman is criticizing the RCMP for waiting a week before they issued a localized alert for a 14-year-old Indigenous girl from Cape Breton. Police say they did not issue the alert because they thought she left willingly. Whitman says reports have highlighted a pattern of police calling missing girls runaways, which is slowing down investigations. A study by a broadcast industry advocacy group is warning that up to 40 local TV outlets and 200 radio stations could be forced to close in Canada by the end of 2022. The Canadian Association of Broadcasters says the financial pressures facing media companies have intensified during the COVID-19 pandemic. It projects that without further government support, close to 50 local radio stations may go out of business within the next 6 months. It says another 150 could shut down in the following 18 months, leading to around 2,000 job losses. Many wildfires continue to burn across North America. There are still those burning in Penticton, BC, putting more than 4,000 people on evacuation alert. Meanwhile, in many parts of California, residents there are slowly returning home to what's left of their homes.
It's awful seeing all this. I mean, my gosh, there's nothing. It's shocking that 2 stories can become like 3 feet high. I have my dog in my car and insurance, so that's good. Ugh. This was like fireproof siding. So it's shell-shocking to me, but I remember after it happened that night and I saw the whole mountain burning on the news, I thought, you know what, I should not expect anything. And I came up here and there is nothing. It's all gone.
Crews continue to assess damage today after a 3rd straight night of protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, after the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man. Officials say 2 people were shot to death and another was wounded overnight. Blake's mother, Julia Jackson, says she's opposed to all of the destruction that had been left by protesters spurred on by her son's shooting. Buildings and vehicles have been destroyed in the city of 100,000. Officials say 100 members of the Wisconsin National Guard have been deployed amid the unrest. NBA players made their strongest statement against racial injustice when the Milwaukee Bucks refused to take to the floor for today's playoff game against the Orlando Magic. As a result, the NBA has postponed Wednesday's playoff games after the Bucks announced their boycott. Players had been discussing boycotting games in the bubble following the shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man, by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The Toronto Raptors and Boston Celtics have also discussed boycotting games in their playoff series, which is scheduled to begin tomorrow. A popular ski resort in Squaw Valley, California is changing its name because the word squaw is a derogatory name for First Nations women. The site was the scene of the 1960 Winter Olympics.
We've announced that we've made a commitment to change the name of our resort, currently named Squaw Valley Alpine Meadows, and the overwhelming evidence is that the term squaw is an offensive, derogatory, dehumanizing word that's been used to refer to Native American women. And so we're changing our name so that a slur isn't in our name anymore. The name of the valley itself, Squaw Valley, was put on the name of this valley about 170 years ago. And our ski area opened on Thanksgiving Day in 1949, and it was named Squaw Valley at that time. We're going to take this really seriously, and we're going to find the right name for the place that honors all of the people who know and love this place.
The Chinese church continues to grow at a phenomenal rate. It's expected to reach 224 million people by the year 2030. As we hear in this next story, this is despite the country being in the midst of some of the worst persecutions of Christians since the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s.
Some of the most intense persecution against Christians in China in decades is happening now. According to China Aid, it may be the most opposition the church has faced since the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. Speaking in an interview with Greg Musselman of Voice of the Martyrs Canada, China Aid's Bob Fu highlights how even the state-run churches are coming under attack.
The government-sanctioned churches, some pastors were even sentenced to 14 years, 17 years imprisonment for simply refusing to take down the cross from the rooftop of the church building. And there are hundreds of thousands of church crosses were forcefully taken down, burned, destroyed, or some even totally leveled with bombs, dynamite, by the Chinese Communist Party under the leadership of President Xi.
Fu cites another case of a church raid in Xiamen City in Fujian province in southeastern China, where even parents face violent attacks in front of their children.
The worst thing happened, occurred during the ruthless raid was, some of their Christian parents were being beaten up, even in front of the infant children. As you saw from the video, the mother was beaten up right in front of her infant baby. The baby was crying out helplessly. And then you have one brother was even beaten so severely, several of his ribs were even broken, and he had to be sent to the hospital for surgery.
Fu concluded by sharing that despite this intense persecution, the church in China continues to grow at a remarkable rate.
The number of Chinese Christians now had reached to 130 million. So that's 10% of China's population. By 2030, the number will be inevitably, and if the persecution intensified, actually it will accelerate the growth. So the number will indefinitely reach to at least 224 million. So China is destined to become the largest Christianized nation in less than a decade. So that only God, can do that.
Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
It's amazing to see the work that God is doing in China. It was another amazing day in southwestern Alberta weather-wise today. Sun mixed with a few clouds, and if you're looking for a little bit of moisture, some of it may be on the way, but not till later this week. Complete weather details are on deck. We had another beautiful day in Lethbridge, lots of sunshine and warm temperatures. Now, if you're looking for some moisture, some of it may be on the way this weekend. Jeanette Roche is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, some of that smoke from the California wildfires have cleared out, and some potential rain this weekend will increase our air quality even more so by Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, we have certainly seen some haziness in the air lately from those fires, but don't worry, when we say rain, it's going to happen overnight. Saturday night, Sunday night, we're still going to have nice sunny days on the weekend, but absolutely the air quality should be improving. Now, as we look into this evening, we could see some hazy skies as well. Overnight low 9 degrees. Into tomorrow, lots of sunshine again, high of 24 degrees, and overnight tomorrow evening, 9 degrees. And then we're already starting to look into the weekend, if you can believe that. Friday, Saturday, lots of sunshine, 27 the high for Friday, 25 the high for Saturday. Saturday evening, we do have a chance of showers, but it's going to clear up for Sunday with a mix of sun and cloud. 17 degrees the high on Sunday, so we're going to see that cooling temperature come in there. Sunday night, also a chance of showers, and then clearing up again for Monday with a mix of sun and cloud. 17 also is our high next Monday, and then we're going to rise again to 23 for Tuesday with a mix of sun and clouds. So we are certainly seeing temperatures kind of rise and a dip. The average high this time of year, 24 degrees, average low, 9 degrees, and we're certainly hitting that in the evenings now. 36 degrees was our high temperature back in 1996. 3 was the low temperature, that was in 1980. 6:39 a.m. was when the sun rose this morning, and our evening sunset tonight, 8:27 p.m. So let's take a look at what is happening across the country for our highs tomorrow. Looking to the west coast, lots of sunshine in Victoria and Vancouver. Highs there, 21 in Victoria, 20 is the high in Vancouver. Calgary high tomorrow, 20 degrees, could see some sunshine. They could see some showers this evening though. Edmonton, 30% chance of showers both tonight and tomorrow morning. Those showers should be clearing up in the morning though with a mix of sun and cloud, high of 20 degrees there tomorrow. Saskatoon tomorrow could see some thunderstorms. Same thing with Regina. Lots of sunshine though in Winnipeg with a high of 26 there. As we get into central Canada here, we're also seeing lots of shower action happening. Possibility of some thunderstorms in Toronto tomorrow. 29 the high, 18 the high in Ottawa with the chance of showers. Periods of rain also expected tomorrow for Montreal as we're seeing those temperatures start to fall into the teens there. 17 is the high for Montreal. Lots of sunshine expected in Fredericton tomorrow, 21 the high, 20 expected for both Charlottetown and Halifax. All of this area here in Atlantic Canada tomorrow, expecting lots of clear skies and sunshine. Possibility of some showers though and gusty winds in St. John's, Newfoundland tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. High 17 there as well. There you go, that is your weather.
BYLAW is in talks with all 10 provinces to discuss offering in-store COVID-19 tests at its Shoppers Drug Mart stores. The grocery giant says its 234 drugstores in Alberta will offer the swab tests by next month. London Drugs also offers COVID-19 testing in our province. The National Bank of Canada is reporting a third quarter profit of $602 million. Now that's down from $608 million in 2019. Revenue dropped to $2.02 billion from $2.04 billion in the same quarter last year. The bank says adjusted earnings per diluted share were unchanged at $1.66, even though provisions for credit losses were up 66% to $143 million. That beat the $1.30 per share that analysts were expecting. A special one-time payment to help people with disabilities during the coronavirus pandemic will cost the federal government $792 million. The number came from the Parliamentary Budget Office earlier today. The majority of the amount will go to the around 1.67 million people in payments of up to $600 each. The Budget Office has been independently tracking federal spending through the pandemic to provide its own analysis over the accuracy of government projections. As you've heard on BCN, Ottawa's extended CERB benefits for another 4 weeks. Now, some business owners are not happy about it since they say it is a disincentive to have people come back to work. Ben Eisen is a senior fellow with the Fraser Institute, and he says with some people, they make more money on CERB.
Entirely logical that they might prefer not to do that and, protect their health better, stay inside, all kinds of good reasons. That's not suggest that people making those decisions are in any way lazy or gaming the system. It's that people respond rationally to incentive. And if we have a long period of time where we pay people not to work, there might be a very good reason for that during a crisis. I think there was a good reason for that during the crisis. But, as long as you have it, it's going to be an obstacle to getting full employment again.
Ben Eisen from the Fraser Institute will also talk about the federal equalization program and how it's not working for Albertans. That's coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 172 points in the day to finish at 16,789. The Dow was up 83 points to 28,331. The S&P 500 was up 35 points to 3478, and the Nasdaq was up 198 points to 11,665. Oil was up 7 cents to 43.41 per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to 2.42. Gold was up 3 cents to 1954.49 an ounce, and silver was unchanged on the day at 27.50 an ounce. Wheat is at $213 per metric ton, barley's at $200, canola's at $4.92, and corn is at $237 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $1.78 to $107, feeder cattle were down $1.30 to $141.78, and lean hogs were down 40 cents to $55.55. The Canadian dollar was unchanged on the day at 76.08 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says kids must be safe in their classrooms and parents should not be losing sleep over it. Earlier today, he announced that Ottawa is providing an additional $2 billion in funding to help provinces and territories cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. That's on top of the $18 billion which was already allocated to schools for back-to-school safety measures. Coming up, a colorful interview with a 15-year-old Alberta entrepreneur who says farmers are getting a raw deal. Hear what Luke Solinsky with AgTech Team has to say in just a moment. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come out and support a worthy cause. It's Family Ice Cream Day at Marble Slab Creamery in South Lethbridge on Friday, August 28th, where they will be giving 25% of all purchases made on that day to the Family Center in support of their programs and services. Plus, enter to win a camping weekend, which includes trailer rental and treats from Marble Slab Creamery. A prize value of $700. For details, visit famcenter.ca. Get to know your city and take part in the Lethbridge Scavenger Hunt. Download the Let's Roam Scavenger Hunt app, lace up your walking shoes, and head out with family to discover the best landmarks in Lethbridge. Put your navigation skills to the test while enjoying the journey at your own pace. No reservations, no tour guides, and fun for all ages. Visit letsroam.com/scavenger hunt. Come and enjoy an afternoon of Japanese culture at the Nikayuko Japanese Garden as they welcome Lethbridge's own taiko drumming group for another exciting performance on Sunday, August 30th at 1 p.m. Price of the performance is included with admission. For details, visit nikayuko.com. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Many young people today love technology, the more the better, and not just in the video gaming world. Now there's a young entrepreneur in Carbon, Alberta, who is pushing tech learning for rural-based kids. 15-year-old Luke Solinsky says kids today should have equal opportunities for learning about computer programming and agriculture. Luke joins me now from Carbon, which is located about 100 kilometers northeast of Calgary. Luke, welcome to Bridge City News.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
That's great to hear. Now, Luke, you're not the typical farm boy. Long gone are the days of coveralls and pitchforks. You say today when it comes to farming, it's more important about learning about technology and how we can really help our farmers and ranchers.
That is true. I mean, apart from things like the space industry and a couple of others, farming is one of the fastest advancing fields out there in terms of technology.
Now, you're still in high school, but you've launched a new company and some software that you say will give farm kids a fair shake when it comes to learning. Tell me more about that.
Yep. Well, it's kind of like little learning modules that anyone can do on their free time or when they have time away from school or time away from work or part-time jobs. Just, lessons that they can learn and things that they can pick up, do it kind of however and whenever they want. And they can learn some valuable farm skills and technology skills along the way too.
So what's the name of your company?
AgTech Steam.
And what inspired you to launch the company?
Well, I saw this problem. In the school I used to go to, the internet was bad. 2, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for decent programming. I mean, at the school we were lucky enough to get a 3D printer, but that was one of the most technologically advanced things we had at the school. So I looked at that problem and I thought, what if we had an online tool that could, utilize other cheaper tools and anyone could do regardless of internet speed or where they are in terms of closest to the nearest city. Because most farm kids' parents don't have a vehicle that's exactly good for maneuvering in cities like Lethbridge or Calgary or Edmonton. And, for me, it takes an hour to get to Calgary from where we are at. And I went to a summer camp back in June 2018, 2017, one of those 2 years. And I had to get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning just so that we could get there on time for the camp to begin. the robotics camp I was going to.
Now, your company, as you mentioned, is called AgTech STEAM. Is there an acronym? Does it actually stand for anything?
Well, AgTech STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math.
Okay. And why did you choose those areas?
Because those are some of the most important areas, because agriculture is very scientifically oriented with fertilizer and chemicals, insects, and technology, because of all the new technology that's coming out, like the dot, all the GPS systems and field systems. Engineering, because there's tractor building, there's shops, service trucks, and mechanics. Art, because there's something beautiful about looking at a field of golden wheat, and that can, expand your mind. And math, because there's a lot of mathematical things that go into agriculture as well, like how much fertilizer am I using, how much pesticide is going to harm this crop, like that kind of thing.
So, Luke, what are some of the biggest challenges that you feel farmers are facing today?
I say some of the biggest challenges farmers are facing today are things from the outside. Like there's a lot of misconception going around that, big agriculture nowadays is bad for the environment, and it's just generally a bad practice, that farmers are cruel to their animals and that it's not ethical, when really that isn't true at all. And that's, I say, one of the industry's biggest problems is misconception and stereotypes.
Luke, how well has your company and software been received so far?
It's been received extremely well. I've gotten support from Farm Canada and from Olds College Science and Division. I've gotten interest in many unusual places. I've gotten interviewed by a man in the United States named Tim Hammermich, and I've even gotten interest from some people who've connected with me on Twitter from Nigeria and India and even the UK.
Wait a minute, it's not a Nigerian prince though, is it? Stay away from that guy.
Nope.
Okay, well,
yeah, it's not a
good.
Nigerian prince.
Okay. Now, you have some serious backers for your company, including Farm Credit Canada, you mentioned Olds College, even Lethbridge College. How did all of that come to be?
Farm Credit Canada discovered me at the Ag Smart show at Olds when we got a booth. Our old friend John Pasharuk, he invited the vice president of FCC over, and the vice president, Fred, he said, "I really like your idea. We want to sponsor you." And I was just amazed that someone so quickly, because I only came up with AgTech STEAM in 2019, like in January 2019.
Right. Now, your first content pack was focusing on entomology, was supposed to be finished this summer. How's it going so far?
Yep. It's actually done, and it's up for down. And the first module of the content pack, entomology, is up for download at agtechsteam.ca. So go check it out if you want to learn more. Be forewarned, the website isn't 110% completed yet, so some features may not work. But the main thing, the download button for the content pack does work. And there will be a lot more coming soon over the next few months and years.
Luke, you talked about the misconceptions people have about the ag industry, but what sorts of diseases should farmers really be concerned about that may be impacting their crops today and maybe in the future?
I think we should worrying about diseases that would impact our crop from the outside. We should be on the lookout for mutations. That's the real issue, is that we should be really on the lookout for mutations in viruses and bacteria, because a lot of people forget that viruses and bacteria are living things too, and living things grow and change, and viruses and bacteria are known for mutating. So I think that's something we should be on the lookout for, is mutations in these diseases.
Luke, between school and your business, when do you have time to just be a kid and go out and ride your bike?
I make time. I make time usually when it hits like 3 or 4 o'clock. I just go, I'm done for the day. I just go and do whatever I please.
And what do your parents think of you becoming an entrepreneur at such a young age?
My dad is, I don't think my dad can quite wrap his head around it. But my mom is extremely proud of me, and she helps me out a lot with all this stuff. I love you, Mom. She's sitting right next to me.
Luke Zielinski with AgTech STEAM. Congratulations so far. Best of luck in the future. And thanks a lot for joining me today on Bridge City News.
You're welcome.
Many Albertans, including our very own Premier Jason Kenney, are not happy with how much our province gives out in equalization payments each and every year. To talk more about it in more detail is Ben Eisen. Ben is a senior fellow with the Fraser Institute and is co-author of the report, Equalization and Stabilization Post-Recession, Is Canada Ready? Ben, welcome to BCN.
Thanks so much.
So Ben, can you briefly explain how equalization really works and its purpose?
It's a relatively straightforward program. There's some complexities in the details, but big picture, it's relatively straightforward. What happens is the federal government collects tax revenue, just like, from people all across, people and businesses all across the country, and it goes into the general revenue. And one of the things that they use that money for is the equalization program. And the equalization program is pretty simple. What it does is it takes federal revenue and it sends it, just pretty much direct cash payments, to lower income provinces in the country, to provinces that are deemed to be less able to provide quality public services to their residents without higher levels of taxation. So it's pretty straightforward. The federal government figures out through a formula which the lower income provinces are and sends their government some money.
You know, Alberta's been forking out billions upon billions of dollars each and every year. Premier Kenney's talked about how much Quebec has received, Ontario has received. Alberta sometimes has received the short end of the stick. Will our province be receiving some of that money back as we're still trying to recover from a pre-COVID-19 recession?
No, Alberta will not receive any equalization payments now or the foreseeable future. The reason for that is that Alberta still, despite all of the terrible economic hardship, still has higher average incomes than people in most other parts of the country, than in any other province, actually. So the way that equalization works, Alberta can't become eligible. But what's interesting is that Alberta has also not been eligible for very significant payments under the stabilization program. That's a cousin of the equalization program designed to help provinces, even if they're higher income like Alberta, that have taken a hard hit. And quirks of the program, that one, have meant that it really has provided very little help for Alberta during this very difficult time. So if you sort of think of the two together, equalization and its less known friend, the stabilization program, you can say that they haven't served Alberta well and that Alberta's received very little money out of either program.
Ben, should Alberta have received some payments perhaps during the oil collapse in 2014?
Well, Alberta did receive at that time some stabilization payments, but just a drop in the bucket in terms of how small. There's an arbitrary cap on the amount. It's $60 per person. The reasons for that cap are sort of silly. They're rooted in an event that happened in the lumber industry in British Columbia in the 1980s. It's ad hoc and arbitrary, and it's not well designed or thought through. So Alberta did receive a small amount of money through stabilization back then, but the amount was not determined by a sensible formula. If you want to have a stabilization program that's designed to help governments deal with it when there's serious shocks to the economy, such as occurred in Alberta in 2014-15, and such is happening again today, then that program needs a fundamental rethink, because right now it's designed so that it can do no more but deliver a drop in the bucket to help a province like Alberta when it's going through a shock like it is today.
Do you think we will ever have a referendum here in Alberta on equalization, Ben? And if so, would the federal Liberals even listen or take notice?
Well, the Premier says that there will be a referendum. Premier Kenney says there will be a referendum. The Fair Deal panel, which the government struck, recommended a referendum on equalization. So the signs do look like it will happen. I can't quite guess how other governments will respond. It is a federal government program, so it becomes a little bit hard to know exactly what that will look like, what the negotiations would be, what the role of other provinces would be, in a little bit of uncharted territory, with one province having a referendum on a specific federal program. But there could be movement in terms of its role in the Constitution, and perhaps one theory holds that the whole purpose of this is to start a broader conversation, not just about equalization, but about fiscal transfers generally, about the thick network of programs by which the federal government collects a lot of money and sends it to the various provinces. And that goes beyond equalization. And so maybe a referendum could trigger a rethink on a lot of those things, and then perhaps something good would come of it.
What kind of percentage do you think we would see of Albertans saying that, you know what, we shouldn't dish out so many billions of dollars each and every year through equalization? 80 to 90% of Albertans?
I won't speculate because I try and steer clear of public opinion and political guessing about political outcomes. But I'll say this, and for Alberta, equalization is a large federal program. It's about a $20 billion a year program, and it's a program from which Albertans receive no direct benefit. So the fact that it's unpopular in Alberta only makes perfect sense. And for taxpayers elsewhere, residents elsewhere in the country who struggle or who wonder why equalization is such a point of friction and tension, I think it's worth taking a moment to think about federal programs that such a large federal program that existed, let's say, that delivered no benefit whatsoever to Ontario. Would we expect it to be popular in Ontario or Quebec? If there was a big federal program as big as $20 billion that delivered no direct benefits to Quebec, would we expect that program to be popular there? No. So the equalization's lack of popularity in Alberta makes perfect sense to me, and it is, in fact, in my view, entirely predictable.
You know, the equalization payments as well here in Alberta have given rise to the Wexit Party, the separatist party here in Alberta. You know, people are saying we should take our money and run. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a political outcome in and of itself, but there are huge advantages to being part of a larger, diversified country, particularly going through difficult times such as now that we can see. And there's also there would certainly be a lot of political uncertainty, economic uncertainty from investors wondering, hey, what would something like that look like? And there's a lot of good evidence that political uncertainty is bad for the economy. It hurts growth. And things of that nature. So I think there'd be a lot to worry about in terms of the effect on political stability, investors thinking, hey, what's this going to really look like? And we saw that. We saw that happened in Quebec a lot of during the separatist movement. A lot of businesses and capital fled out of Montreal. And so it's something to keep in mind that there can be damage caused by the uncertainty that these things can create.
Now, Ben, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier about the current equalization program. Provinces receive payments based on their fiscal capacity, but how else does it work?
Well, the fiscal capacity calculation is quite complicated. What that means is it evaluates each province's ability. Let's say they all have the same tax rates. If you would generate more money, you have higher fiscal capacity. If you have less money, you have lower fiscal capacity. But it also calculates. It also includes natural resource revenue. Approximately 50%. It's 50%. The formula is a little quirky and not worth getting into, but for the sake of simplicity, natural resource revenue also feeds into that, and that's problematic in terms of the incentives that it creates, because in have-not provinces, Quebec, Manitoba, there's been disincentives towards the actual generation of natural resource revenue because people respond to incentives. When they see their receipts of those revenues go up, equalization goes down almost commensurately. So certainly it's very important when we're looking at equalization and its related programs to take a hard look at what are the incentives that this is creating, and is it creating incentives for growth? Is it creating incentives for national cohesion? Or is it creating incentives for different kinds of public policy and frankly serving to create tension? And when the program is creating tension rather than unity, I'd go so far as to say that it's really failing to achieve one of its key purposes, which should be to bring Canadians together.
Why do you think Ottawa would come up with like Bill C-69, preventing a lot of oil pipelines and regulations on our energy sector when you need that money to help support equalization payments? It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face, the expression goes.
And that, I think, is a major source of frustration in Alberta, that there's a sense, and not just a sense, there has been real challenges to the creation of energy infrastructure in the province that have been created by policymaking in other parts of the country. And that is a huge source of frustration. Albertans, like people in any other province in the country, want to prosper. They want to be able to make use of the natural resources they have. They want to be able to get global prices for their resources rather than something less, which is what happens when you have a lack of pipeline access. So I think on that point, and certainly all of Canada benefits from a prosperous Alberta. As you say, it contributes more to equalization payments, not just equalization, though. It contributes more per person to all federal programming when Alberta's thriving and people are making high incomes and paying high income taxes. All of Canada benefits from a strong Alberta. And in fact, Canada is badly weakened by a weak Alberta. And so certainly frustration surrounding laws that made the development of energy infrastructure impossible for so long. I think frustration surrounding that is entirely reasonable.
You know, Ben, an oil tanker carrying Alberta crude just completed a 1-month journey through the Panama Canal because there was no pipeline from BC to the East Coast, you know, to carry that Alberta crude. That was a 12,000-kilometer trek. Ben, many agree this is simply ridiculous. Will we eventually see a pipeline from the west to the East Coast so people can use Alberta oil?
Well, I don't know what we will see, but I will, because I try not to make predictions, but I will say this, the case for moving oil through pipelines is very strong, even particularly if we want to focus on the environmental effects. There's very strong evidence that if you move oil through pipelines, you're much less likely to create environmental damages at the local level than if you move it all the other ways that you can move it. You move it by rail. You just mentioned a long voyage of a ship. Something can go wrong, can easily go wrong there. But certainly the evidence is crystal clear that pipelines are a much safer way to move oil across the country than oil by rail, which is the #1 replacement when pipelines don't exist or are inadequate. So from an environmental perspective, there's a very good reason to be supportive to the development of good, high-quality energy infrastructure, including pipelines in Alberta, if the market can bear it.
Stats Canada says the Canadian economy has shrank by 8% over the first few months of 2020 because of the COVID-19 virus. Now, in your opinion, how long will it take for the economy to really bounce back?
Oh, I wish I knew. It's going to be a challenge. There's going to be a partial. With the reopening, there will be a strong uptick. People go from no economic activity to some economic activity. But it's not going to drive you all the way back to where you started in terms of undoing all of the economic damage. There's still big challenges in terms of getting people to work safely, making sure that people have safe places to put their kids so that they can go and do their jobs. I don't know how long it will take Canada to get out of this, to really get going again economically, get back to the place where it was before all this. I can't make a prediction on that front, but I can say it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be a really fast process because we haven't solved all the problems that we need to solve to get a recovery going full speed ahead.
Now, due to the changes in our economy, Ben, do you think maybe some of the current programs, the federal programs, are actually working?
They're achieving some of their goals while creating other obstacles. You think about a program like the CERB program, which is replacing income that's been lost for people, and that has certainly achieved certain goals, some very important goals in terms of bridging people through hardship, helping families that otherwise would have been in terrible circumstances and perhaps faced insolvency. So it's certainly achieved some of its very important objectives. But now we're reaching a point where, as you mentioned, the issue of recovery has come about, and there's now real questions about incentives for people to return to work. If people can make almost the exact same amount of money on CERB as they would going to work a 30 or 40-hour week, it's entirely logical that they might prefer not to do that and protect their health better, stay inside, all kinds of good reasons. That's not to suggest that people making those decisions are in any way lazy or gaming the system. It's that people respond rationally to incentives. And if we have a long period of time where we pay people not to work, there might be a very good reason for that during a crisis. I think there was a good reason for that during the crisis. But as long as you have it, it's going to be an obstacle to getting full employment again, and it's going to be an obstacle to getting the kind of full speed ahead recovery that we would all like Canada to have eventually, and once it's safe.
So maybe some policy changes that would improve the situation, such as maybe phasing out the CERB payments?
It's going to have to be. I think it's going to have to be phased out eventually. It can't go on like this permanently. It's extremely expensive, and we're already seeing deficits pile up at the federal level, over $300 billion. The provinces themselves are facing fiscal challenges. My view is that CERB is going to have to be unwound eventually. Unwinding it won't be easy, especially if the economy hasn't fully recovered. There's always going to be concern. You don't want a situation in which you're creating terrible economic hardship for Canadians. So you want to be sensitive to the challenges of the COVID recession while recognizing that if you pay people not to work as much as they would to work indefinitely, you're going to have labor market problems. So I don't envy any of the people making these decisions. They're hard choices. They're difficult policy changes, but the programs that have been implemented, the CERB program, the CEWS, the wage subsidy, they're simply, in my view, not sustainable in the long run. And the governments need to be thinking now about how they're going to unwind them, because I'll tell you, it's not going to be an easy trick.
You know, you touched on that. You're right. The deficit is $343 billion. The debt's approaching $1.2 trillion. So, and I mean, this is money that we have to pay back eventually. Ben, how much will the new NAFTA or the USMCA really help our economy get back on track?
It certainly is better than if there were lots of new protectionism. There was sort of concern of that a few years back, that fundamentally there might be fundamental changes in the Canada-U.S. trade relationship. That doesn't seem to have come to pass, and that's good news. Freer trade between Canada and the United States has generally helped the economy and been good. That said, in the short term, we have barriers between our two countries that would have been unimaginable a year ago, in terms of not having people being able to flow back and forth between the two places, disruption of commerce and supply chains. So free trade between Canada and the United States is great. It won't be able to have its full positive effects until we're able to open up borders again and let people go back and forth. And that's not probably going to happen until the virus is under control in both countries, which is potentially some ways away.
Ben Eisen, Senior Fellow from the Fraser Institute, thanks for joining me today from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.